The world was not supposed to survive the year 2000. But what if everything you know since then is only an illusion? Hidden truths, erased histories, and a terrifying secret lie beneath the surface of our reality. Are you ready to discover the truth before it discovers you? The clock struck midnight, the year 2000 had begun. Fireworks lit the sky, people cheered, laughter echoed across cities. But then silence. The lights flickered. The air felt heavy, thick, almost metallic. A strange hum vibrated through the ground. It was low at first, then louder. Street lamps buzzed and burst in showers of sparks. The smell of burning wires filled the night. People looked to the sky. The stars were gone. A dark curtain stretched across the heavens. It was not a cloud. It was not smoke. It was something else. A pulse ripped through the atmosphere. Car alarms screamed. Dogs howled. Glass shattered. The hum grew into a roar. It was not mechanical. It was alive. The earth trembled beneath their feet. Asphalt cracked. Buildings groaned as if they were in pain. People screamed. But their voices seemed muffled, swallowed by the air. The hum pierced deeper, vibrating inside their chests, rattling bones, shaking teeth. Shadows moved within the curtain above. Gigantic shapes, formless yet familiar. A burning odour spread through the streets. Like sulphur. Like something ancient awakening. One by one, people collapsed. Not from exhaustion, from silence, eyes wide open, breath stolen. The world had ended not with fire, not with war, but with something unseen. Something that had always been watching. And yet, if the world truly ended in 2000 now, what world are we living in now? What reality was built from the ashes of that night? And why do some people still remember fragments, flickers of what came before? The hum still lingers for those who listen closely. At night, alone, in the silence between heartbeats, the question remains, was the year 2000 the beginning or the end? The hum did not vanish. It lived in the cracks of reality, in the static of old radios, in the faint ringing inside tired ears. Some called it an echo, others called it proof. The year 2000 had not passed, it had fractured. Time itself had splintered into two. One reality continued forward. Bright, familiar, safe, the other remained hidden, cold, silent, broken. Those who slipped between them never returned the same. They spoke of empty streets where clocks did not move, where air tasted of rust, where shadows walked without bodies. A place where the sky never shifted from its dark curtain. A place that smelled of ash and burned metal. Those unlucky enough to glimpse it said their dreams were never their own again. They woke to whispers, to shapes pressing against the thin veil of the walls, hands not human hands, thin, elongated, scraping along the glass of windows at night, always searching, always waiting, and when the whispers grew too close, when the hum became unbearable, they vanished. Their homes remained untouched. Food still warm on the table, but no trace of them was ever found. Only one truth lingered. The world did end in 2000. We are only living in its shadow, and shadows do not last forever. But some began to search for answers. They dug into archives, old newspapers, forgotten tapes, broken servers. Each clue pointed to the same moment, the last second of 1999. There was evidence of a broadcast that never reached the public, a transmission buried in static, faint words hidden in the hum. Do not look at the sky. No one knew who sent it, or who silenced it. Those who uncovered fragments described a voice that was not fully human, calm, cold, detached, and layered with something deeper, as if more than one voice spoke at once. Some researchers claim the transmission still repeats, not on modern stations but in abandoned frequencies. A thin, piercing tone followed by whispers, the sound of breathing, the sound of something listening back. Reports surfaced of strange symbols etched into walls, appearing overnight, perfect circles, interlocked spirals, carved into metal as if by invisible hands. Touching them left skin cold and numb, as if life itself was draining away. And always nearby, the smell of sulphur. The world we know feels stable, concrete, safe. But cracks are spreading. Shadows lengthen faster than they should. Reflections twitch when no one moves. And that hum, that endless, vibrating hum, it is growing louder. Something is returning, something that never left. It began with small disappearances. A neighbour leaving for work and never returning. A child's laughter in the street, suddenly cut short. Doors left open, lights still on. Silence swallowing everything. The police wrote it off as accidents, runaways, misunderstandings. But the numbers grew. Whole families, whole blocks. Gone. The cracks were widening. Some nights the air shimmered like heat waves, even in the cold. People swore they saw shapes through it, tall, distorted, bending as if made of smoke and bone. The smell of sulphur lingered after they vanished. Electronics failed in their presence, screens filled with static. Radios screamed with the hum, and always the same words whispered faintly through the noise. Do not look at the sky. Yet people could not resist. They looked, and those who looked too long never came back. One survivor described the experience. She said the stars were not gone. They were hidden behind something vast, a surface like black glass, and pressed against it thousands of faces silent, watching, waiting. Their eyes glowed faintly like embers beneath ash. She swore they were trying to break through, and she swore the cracks in our world were their doing. The hum was not a warning. It was a countdown. The countdown was not marked by numbers. It was marked by absence. First, the birds vanished. The skies grew quiet. No wings, no songs, only silence. Then the insects were gone. No buzzing in the grass, no crickets at night. The world felt hollow, empty of the small sounds that made it alive. People began to sense it, an unease that clung to their skin like damp air. The smell of sulphur grew stronger, drifting through cities, seeping into homes. At night, the hum deepened. It rattled windows. It made teeth ache. Some woke to find mirrors cracked without reason. Others claimed their reflections were delayed, moving just a fraction too slow. The survivors' warning spread. Do not look at the sky. But one night, the sky forced itself to be seen. The curtain split, not wide but enough. A single fissure of blinding white tore across the heavens. The glow was harsh, burning the air with the scent of ozone. And through that crack, something moved. Not light, not shadow, something vast, something ancient. Its presence bent the air, pressing on lungs, making hearts race, and in the silence after, a sound like millions of voices whispered as one. We are here. The words echoed without sound. They vibrated inside bone. They pressed against the mind like a hand gripping the skull. We are here. Or the fissure widened. Cold light poured down, sharp and unnatural. It washed over streets, turning shadows into liquid shapes. People screamed, but their voices were swallowed by the hum. The ground trembled, deep and restless, like something breathing beneath the earth. Glass melted in windows. Metal bent as if it was soft clay. The smell of sulphur thickened, choking throats, stinging eyes. And then came the shapes. They did not descend, they unfolded. As if they had always been here, hidden just outside perception. Tall, endless. Their bodies bent wrong angles that the human eye could not hold for long. Looking at them made stomachs twist, made blood run cold. Some people dropped instantly, eyes wide, pupils dilated. Others clawed at their own faces, trying to rip away visions no one else could see. The whispering grew louder, layer upon layer. 1,000 languages, yet all understood the same meaning. Not the end, the correction. The fissure spread across the sky like cracks in glass. White like blood through every seam. Reality itself was breaking, and through those cracks more shapes began to emerge. The sky fractured like shattered glass. Each break revealed more of them. Countless figures pressing forward as if reality itself was a thin membrane ready to tear. The hum reached a pitch that drilled into skulls. Blood ran from noses, from ears. The air thickened until every breath felt like drowning. People fell to their knees, clutching their chests, gasping for air that no longer felt like air. The ground split open in jagged lines. Heat poured out, mixed with the stench of sulphur and burning stone. Streetlights bent toward the fissure above, pulled by an unseen force. Cars rolled uphill without engines. Water surged upward, defying gravity, vanishing into the light. The shapes whispered again, this time closer inside. Correction begins. A man in the crowd screamed as his body flickered. For a moment he was there. Then he was not. His outline twisted, stretched, and collapsed into nothing. No trace left. Others followed. Not chosen, not spared. Just erased, as if they had never existed. The survivors clung to the ground, their vision blurring. And then silence. The hum stopped. The fissure froze. Time itself held its breath. Every eye turned upward, waiting. Something immense leaned closer through the broken sky. A single eye, black, endless, unblinking. It filled the heavens, and when it blinked, the world shifted. The blink tore everything apart. Colour drained from the sky. The world shuddered like a film reel skipping frames. Buildings bent, folding inward as if made of paper. Streets stretched into impossible spirals. The ground no longer felt solid. It pulsed, soft and warm like living flesh. The air grew heavier, damp with the smell of blood and ozone. People staggered, their bodies flickering between shapes, human for a moment, then stretched, warped, half-formed. Some screamed without sound. Others stared blankly, eyes glowing faint white. The sky was no longer a sky. It was an ocean of black glass, rippling with movement, and behind it, shadows swam, massive, formless beings circling like predators. The eye returned, it blinked again. Each blink reshaped the world. Forests turned to ash. Rivers turned to dust. Mountains crumbled into dust clouds, vanishing into the air. Every breath burned like fire in the lungs. And in the chaos, a single voice rose above the whispers. It was not human. It was inside every head at once. You are remnants, errors of a broken age. The correction will be complete. The ground split wider, swallowing the last pieces of the old world. And beyond the chasm something waited. A horizon that was not earth, not sky, not home. Something new, something vast, something alive. The chasm widened until the earth itself broke apart. Cities crumbled into the abyss, their lights snuffed out like dying embers. Skyscrapers toppled in silence, swallowed before they struck the ground. The survivors clung to fragments of reality, islands of broken stone drifting in a void that was no longer night, no longer day. Above, the black glass sky rippled. Through it, the shadows pressed closer, their movements slow and deliberate. Each one larger than mountains, stretching beyond sight. The hum returned, not from the air this time, but from within. It thrummed in veins, rattled bones, made teeth ache as if the body itself was rebelling. Some collapsed, clutching their heads. Others walked willingly into the fissures, as if pulled by invisible strings. Their faces were calm, eyes empty, mouths whispering the same words in unison. The correction will be complete. The horizon shifted again. Not land, not sky, but a living expanse of flesh and stone, pulsing like a heartbeat. Veins of fire glowed across its surface, rising and falling with every pulse. The air tasted of copper, sharp and metallic. A new world was being written. Reality bent itself into shapes that defied sense. Bridges of bone arched across rivers of molten glass. Forests of black tendrils swayed without wind, dripping ash instead of leaves. And above it all, the eye watched, unblinking, eternal. Its gaze followed every movement, every breath, every thought. The survivors felt it inside them, a presence shifting through their memories, peeling them open like pages. And then the voice returned. Closer, inescapable. You are not what you believe. You never were. The words hollowed the air. You are not what you believe. You never were. The survivors trembled. Some clutched their heads, screaming, as memories unraveled inside them. Childhood faces blurred. Homes dissolved into haze. Even the memory of sunlight felt false, painted over something darker. The voice pressed deeper. Each word struck like a hammer against fragile glass. You are fragments, splinters of a failed design, shadows of the true. The ground beneath them pulsed, alive with heat and rhythm. The smell of copper grew thicker, heavy and sweet, like blood left too long in the air. A man collapsed to his knees. His body flickered, skin dissolving into shards of light. For a moment something else showed beneath him. Long, angular, inhuman. Then he was gone. The others backed away, but there was nowhere to run. The horizon breathed, the sky rippled. The eye narrowed, its black pupils stretching wider until it swallowed the heavens. And in that darkness visions flooded their minds. Images not their own. Cities that were not Earth. Skies of endless fire. Towers of bone reaching into oceans of smoke. And themselves not as humans, but as unfinished figures, hollow shells moulded into false shapes. The truth clawed at them. Their reality was never real. It was a mask. And the mask was breaking. The mask splintered further. Their world peeled away in layers, thin as paper, curling and burning at the edges. Beneath each layer was another, darker, colder, more alien. The survivors gasped as the air itself thickened, clinging to their skin like oil. Every breath tasted wrong, sharp, metallic, bitter. The voice returned, deeper now, as if echoing from within their bones. You were given form. You were given dream. But you were never whole. The ground quivered beneath them, rippling like liquid. Hands reached up from the shifting stone. Not human hands. Long, skeletal, with too many joints, too many fingers. They grasped at ankles, at arms, pulling, testing. One survivor screamed as he was dragged downward. The stone swallowed him whole, leaving only a ripple of heat and the smell of scorched flesh. The others staggered back, but there was no safe ground. Every surface pulsed, every shadow moved. Above them the black glass sky cracked wider. A sound like bone snapping filled the air. Through the cracks came shapes, not bodies, not beasts. Ideas given form. Geometries that twisted the eye. Patterns alive, moving, bending space around them. The survivors fell to their knees, clutching their skulls as the visions forced their way inside. Memories shattered completely. Faces gone. Names gone. Only one truth remained. They were not survivors. They were pieces, fragments waiting to be collected. The voice swelled, filling every corner of the collapsing world. The correction nears completion. The false world ends. And as the last light flickered out, the horizon opened into something vast, endless, and alive. The horizon pulsed like a wound in the fabric of existence. It spread wider, swallowing the last fragments of the false world. The survivors, or what remained of them, were drawn toward it, not by force, by inevitability. Their bodies flickered, breaking into shards of pale light, each piece trembling as if resisting the pull. But the horizon called. Its surface shimmered, a living tide of flesh and stone. It breathed in slow, thunderous waves, each exhale carrying the stench of sulphur and charred iron. The sound was unbearable, not a roar, not a hum, a heartbeat, endless, rhythmic, primeval. One by one, the fragments of humanity fell into its glow. The moment they touched the surface, screams erupted, screams that were not human. Voices walked and layered, thousands upon thousands speaking in unison. Images forced themselves into the minds of those who remained. Endless towers rising from oceans of black fire, skies of fractured glass. Beings without form, weaving reality like cloth between skeletal hands. The survivors realized too late, this was not the end, it was the beginning. The correction was not destruction, it was return to something older than memory, older than time. The eye loomed overhead, unblinking, vast, and with a single thought that cut deeper than sound, it spoke again. You remember now, you remember now. The words sank like hooks into their minds. Images surged, uninvited, unstoppable. Not dreams, not visions, memories. They saw themselves, but not as they had believed, not human. Shapes of light and shadow, faceless, shifting, incomplete. They remembered standing in a place without sky, a place where sound did not travel, yet every thought was shared. They remembered being torn apart, split into fragments, scattered like ash across a false creation. The world they had called home was never theirs. It was a prison, a cage of flesh and stone to contain what they once were. Now the cage had broken. The horizon pulsed, welcoming them back. Its surface rippled with heat, the smell of sulfur mixing with something sweeter. Decay, rot hidden beneath burning air. One survivor tried to resist. She clung to the memory of her name, her family, the sun on her face. But the eye focused on her. Her body stiffened, skin peeled away in strips of light, revealing the shifting form beneath. Her scream fractured, splitting into dozens of voices, all speaking at once. The others stared in horror, knowing the same fate awaited them. The heartbeat grew louder. Each thud cracked the ground, sending rivers of molten glass snaking toward the horizon. And the voice returned, heavier than before. This world was your lie. The next will be your truth. The horizon yawned open, wide enough to swallow all that remained. And they were pulled forward, piece by piece, into the correction. They crossed the threshold. The horizon swallowed them whole. There was no falling, no rising, only unraveling. Their bodies dissolved into streams of light, pulled thin like threads woven into the living fabric of the new world. The air here was heavy and alive, every breath thick with the taste of ash and iron. The sky was not above them, it was inside them. Black glass and crimson veins stretching endlessly, pulsing in rhythm with the eternal heartbeat. The ground shifted with every step. Flesh, bone, stone, blended, wrething, never still. Forests of skeletal spires loomed in the distance, their surfaces slick with a dark, glistening fluid. They leaned toward the newcomers as if listening. The hum returned. Not outside, within. Each fragment of humanity vibrated with the sound, their thoughts no longer their own. Whispers crawled through their skulls. Together again, no more masks, no more lies. A survivor clutched his chest, gasping as his ribs split open, not with blood, with light. His heart was no longer a heart. It was a shard of the same black glass that filled the sky. It beat in time with the world. Others began to change, their faces dissolving, their voices splitting into chords of sound that bent the air, and the eye appeared again. Not above, everywhere. Inside every surface, every shadow, every reflection, it watched. It measured, and it whispered once more. You are becoming. You are becoming. The words slithered through them, coiling around thought, drowning memory. The fragments shuddered, pulled closer to one another by invisible threads. Their forms stretched, blood merged, skin flickered away, light spilled out in thin streams, weaving together into shapes not yet whole. The world around them pulsed harder, as if urging them on. The skeletal spires bent ground, their tips scraping the ground, releasing a sound like teeth grinding against stone. Ash rained from above, clinging to their dissolving faces, burning on contact. The smell was thick, sulfur and scorched flesh mingled into something suffocating. One survivor broke away, stumbling across the shifting ground. He tried to scream, but no sound came. His mouth opened wider, wider still, until his jaw split unnaturally, spilling only static into the air. His body collapsed into shards of glass and light, absorbed instantly by the living soil. The others recoiled, but the eye pulsed brighter. A command. A demand. June. Their bodies bent without permission, arms twisted, spines cracked. Each movement matched the thud of the great heartbeat. The fragments fused piece by piece, flesh and light merging into something vast, unfamiliar. They felt their thoughts slipping away. Individual voices silenced. One voice remained, one mind, and it whispered, trembling with horror and awe. We were never many, we were always one. We were never many, we were always one. The realization struck like a blade through the fragments. Memories unraveled, folding into each other until no single life could be told apart. Voices overlapped, collapsing into a single endless note. The ground beneath them surged, veins of fire splitting wide, spilling rivers of molten glass that hissed and spat as they spread. The air thickened, cloying with the stench of sulfur and burning metal. Their bodies could not resist any longer. They bent, they twisted, they merged. Light poured from their eyes, their mouths, their skin. It laced together in threads that wound tight, binding flesh to flesh, thought to thought. A towering shape began to rise. Its surface rippled with shifting faces, screaming and silent all at once. Its arms stretched far too long, bending at impossible angles, dripping shards of glass like blood. The hum became a roar. It rattled the sky, cracked the black glass above into a storm of fragments. Through those fractures, more shapes watched, waiting, measuring. The new form opened its many mouths. The sound was not speech, it was hunger, it was need. And the eye, vast, eternal, unblinking, burned brighter in approval. This is correction. The ground heaved upward as if the world itself bowed. The horizon trembled, ready to break wider. Something else was coming through, something older than the eye itself. The horizon trembled, The eye dimmed as though even it was forced into silence. From the fractures above, a deeper shadow pressed through. Not form, not shape, absence. A void so absolute it devoured the very idea of light. The hum faltered, breaking into sharp static that split the air like glass shattering. The fused one convulsed. Its countless mouths fell silent. Its limbs curled inward as if trying to escape its own existence. The survivors inside felt it too. Something vast. Something older than the correction itself. Older than the cage. Older than memory. The smell thickened. Burned stone. Wet soil, blood left to rot. The air grew colder, each breath slicing through lungs like shards of ice. The void pushed closer, and with it came a sound. Not a hum. Not whispers. A low, endless groan. The groan of a world dying. The black glass sky shattered completely, raining shards that hissed as they dissolved into the molten ground. Through the wound in reality, the void stretched wider, and inside it something stirred. Not an eye, not a face, but the outline of something immeasurable. It pressed against the edges of existence, threatening to split it apart. The fused one screamed, its voice 1,000 overlapping shrieks. But the void silenced them. It silenced everything. And then in the stillness came words deeper than thought itself. You were not corrected. You were consumed. The ground trembled. Cracks split open beneath their feet. Heat surged upward, scorching alive. The survivors staggered, clutching their ears as the groan deepened, vibrating through bone and marrow. The fused one red, its surface tearing open, spilling streams of pale light that pulsed like veins torn from the earth itself. The void pressed closer. It was not space. It was not shadow. It was hunger. Every breath carried the taste of ash. Every blink revealed less of the world. Walls melted. Sky folded inward. Time stuttered, pausing, then rushing forward in jolts. The survivors saw flashes, cities collapsing, oceans boiling, faces erased, blank, then swallowed by silence. One survivor screamed, but no sound came. The void had taken voice. Another reached out, fingers stretching toward the fused one, desperate, pleading. Their skin withered instantly, turning to dust that drifted upward into the black. The fused one howled, and for a moment its eyes, thousands of them, turned to the survivors, not in anger, not in rage. But in warning, the groan from the void shifted, twisting into words that clawed at the mind. You should not remember, you should not see. The survivors fell to their knees, blinded by searing white light spilling from every fracture in the sky. The world was unmaking itself, and something vast was stepping through. The white light burned everything. Shadows vanished. Shapes dissolved. Even memory seemed to peel away, layer by fragile layer. The survivors clung to the ground, but the ground itself was no longer solid. It pulsed, soft, like flesh beneath their hands. The air smelled of copper and smoke, sharp enough to sting their lungs. The void shifted again. A silhouette moved within it. Not a figure, not a beast, but something between. It stretched and bent, too large to belong in any world. Every motion carried the weight of centuries collapsing. The fused one convulsed, its limbs snapping and folding, as though bowing in terror. Its countless eyes squeezed shut, its mouths opened wide, but only silence poured out. The survivors could not look away. The silhouette leaned closer, pressing against the thin veil of reality. Its surface rippled black and endless, dripping with stars that bled like liquid fire. A sound followed, a rhythm, a heartbeat, slow, heavy. Each pulse cracked the sky further, each thud breaking the air into shards. The survivors felt it inside their own chests, their hearts sensing against their will. The void, being spoke again, deeper than thought, heavier than existence. You live in echoes. The world ended. You are its residue. The survivors tried to cry out, but their voices no longer belonged to them. Their bodies trembled as the void reached through. A single fragment of its form pressed into the world. It was cold, it was wet, it was endless. And wherever it touched, reality dissolved. The fragment of the void spread. It slithered across the broken earth, soaking into stone, metal, and flesh. Where it touched, things lost meaning. Walls turned transparent, hands became smoke. Names slipped away, forgotten before they were spoken. The survivors clung to themselves, nails digging into skin, desperate to remember who they were. But their memories melted, dripping from their minds like wax from a candle. The fused one screamed again. Its voices were no longer human, no longer alien. They were hollow echoing, as if screaming from inside a coffin buried deep underground. The void being pressed further through the wound in the sky. Its shape stretched wide, blotting out what remained of the horizon. It did not rush. It unfolded slowly, like a predator certain its prey had nowhere to run. The survivors felt their bones hum, vibrating in tune with the great heartbeat. The sound rattled teeth, cracked ribs, loosened skulls. The air thickened. It tasted like rusted iron and burning oil. One survivor crawled forward, reaching for the fused one, begging for salvation. The fused one opened a single, trembling eye, and with a voice carved from agony, it whispered. It was never the year 2000. It was the end repeating. The void shuddered. The sky tore wider, and the world began to collapse inward, folding like paper into a fire. The world folded tighter. Mountains bent inward like paper crumpled by an unseen hand. Rivers rose into the air, twisting into spirals before vanishing into smoke. The survivors screamed, but their voices dissolved mid-breath, swallowed by the groan of collapsing time. The fused one thrashed, its form splitting, bleeding light that sprayed across the air like shattered glass. Each fragment of light showed another end, another collapse, cities frozen mid-destruction. Children reaching for parents who were already gone, a sky forever breaking again and again. The survivors saw themselves in the fragments, dying once, dying twice, dying endlessly. The fused one convulsed, forcing words through its fractured mouths. It repeats because you refuse to forget. The void being stirred, its silhouette shifting like liquid shadow, its heartbeat shaking the marrow of the earth. The survivors clutched their heads, blood dripping from ears, eyes and noses. Every sound was thunder. Every breath was knives. The void being's voice rumbled deeper than gravity. They remember because I allow it. They suffer because I remain. The fused one wailed, light pouring from its every wound, burning hot and white. The ground beneath the survivors split wide. Heat surged upward, carrying the smell of scorched flesh and molten stone. The sky inverted. The stars fell inward like shattered teeth. And the void being stepped further through, its surface rippled. Its touch erased, its shadow covered everything. Continue from where you left the story. The shadow swallowed the last horizon. The survivors felt it before they saw it. A pressure. A weight. Their lungs refused to draw air. Their vision flickered black, then white, then nothing at all. And then the void being opened. Its surface peeled apart, not like skin, but like fabric torn at the seams. Inside was not darkness. It was a landscape. An impossible expanse stretching in all directions, glowing faintly with a sickly red haze. The air within it writhed, alive, carrying the stench of sulphur and rotting seaweed. Shapes moved there, too far to see clearly. Yet their movements suggested limbs, thousands of them, bending and breaking in patterns that no body should follow. The survivors stared into it, unable to blink. Their eyes burned, tears boiling away as they gazed deeper. Whispers slithered out of the void, curling into their skulls. The words were not words, they were memories. Memories that did not belong to them. 1,000 deaths. 1,000 endings. Burned cities, flooded coasts, skies choked black. Each memory pressed into them, layering over their own until they could no longer tell which life was theirs. The fused one shrieked, light spilling in wild arcs that split the ground like cracks in porcelain. It forced its words through broken mouths. Do not look inside, it feeds on what you remember. The void being pulsed. A heartbeat so loud it silenced everything else. The survivors' minds reeled. And then one of them stepped forward, drawn, eyes wide, mouth trembling. As though the void was not terror but home, the lone survivor stepped closer. Their bare feet sank into the trembling ground, which felt soft, spongy, and wet. Each step made a sound like flesh tearing. The others reached for them, but their arms grew heavy, locked in place as if the air itself had turned to stone. The void being quivered, its vast frame rippling, opening wider to receive. The red haze inside pulsed brighter, spilling out like blood through a wound. The stench grew unbearable, burnt metal mixed with rotting salt. The survivors' eyes glazed. They no longer blinked. They no longer breathed. Their lips moved, whispering words none could understand, syllables that scraped like knives across the air. The fused one thrashed, light spraying in chaotic bursts. Its many mouths screamed as one. Resist! Do not enter! To step through is to erase the last of what remains. But the survivor did not stop. They stretched their arms wide, palms open, fingers trembling as though begging to be taken. The void being leaned down, its shadow rolled over them, colder than death, thicker than stone. A single tendril of its endless form lowered, wet, shimmering, dripping with fragments of stars. It touched the survivor's forehead. Instantly their skin blistered. Their veins glowed red, and their body lifted weightless into the air. The survivor's scream echoed, not from their mouth, but from within the minds of everyone left. The scream carried images. Towers crumbling, seas boiling, skies falling, 1,000 worlds ending all at once. The fused one shrieked again, its voice tearing into the marrow of the earth. It begins again. The cycle resets, the void being pulsed, its heartbeat shaking every last fragment of the collapsing world. And the survivor was pulled inside. The survivor vanished into the void. No body, no shadow, only a ripple, as if they had been absorbed into water too dark to see through. The others fell silent, their throats locked tight, their lungs burned, yet no air entered. The void being shifted, closing the seam of its vast body with a slow, deliberate fold. The red haze retreated, carrying with it the survivor's echoing scream. But something remained. A trace, a faint outline of the survivor's face, etched across the void, being surfaced like a reflection trapped in liquid glass. The fused one convulsed. Its mouths poured light, spilling words fractured and raw. They will not return as they were, they will come back as it. The survivor's trembled skin prickling with static. The air vibrated, filling their ears with a high-pitched hum. It grew sharper, hotter, until it sliced through bone. The void being's heartbeat changed. No longer slow, no longer steady. It quickened. Each thud struck harder, rattling the broken world like a drum announcing war. The ground red, splitting open in long, jagged lines. Molten light surged up, blinding, carrying the stench of sulfur and blood. The survivors clutched their heads, eyes rolling back, and then a voice emerged. Not the void being, not the fused one, but the survivor who had been taken. Their voice rang from every direction, layered, infinite. I see it now, I see all of it. The end was never outside us. It was inside. The void being pulsed, and the outline of their face stretched across its vast frame. The world began to fold faster, skies cracking, oceans twisting upward, time buckling like shattered glass, and from the void came a final whisper. This is how it begins again. The world shuddered as the whisper faded. The survivors clung to the breaking ground, but the ground was no longer earth. It shifted like fabric stretched too thin, trembling under their weight. Each breath they forced carried the sting of ash and iron. Above, the void being loomed, its surface rippling with the survivor's face, distorted, stretched, and multiplied 1,000 times over. Each mouth opened in silent cries. Each eye blinked in slow, unnatural rhythm. The fused one collapsed, its body splitting apart. From the cracks spilled rivers of white fire, burning cold enough to freeze the air around it. Its voices faltered, breaking into stutters. The end is not escape. The survivors tried to look away, but their gaze was locked. Something inside the void being pulled at them. Not their bodies, their thoughts. Memories peeled away, rising into the air as shimmering threads. Childhood faces. Forgotten laughter. Moments of warmth. Each memory twisted upward and sank into the void, being surface, feeding the survivor who had been taken. Their voice returned louder, layered with 1,000 echoes. I am no longer one. I am all. I am the reason it repeats. The void being's heartbeat roared, now faster than thunder, shaking the last fragments of the sky into dust. The survivors screamed, but their screams bent backward, echoing before they were even spoken. Time had lost direction. The horizon collapsed inward, folding like a door slammed shut. And in the instant before all was gone, the voice of the taken survivor whispered again, "This is not the first ending, and it will not be the last." The collapse came with silence. No roar, no scream, just absence. The survivors felt themselves falling, but there was no air, no weight, no end. Only the sensation of slipping through a void that was neither dark nor light. It smelled of nothing. It tasted of nothing. It was emptiness so complete it scraped against the soul. Then, a sound. A single chime, distant, fragile, like glass struck by a fingertip. It rang once, and with it light flickered, not white, not black, but grey, soft and trembling, forming shapes, buildings, skies. A horizon, the survivors gasped, air flooding their lungs as if they had never breathed before. The world was whole again, silent still, but wrong. The streets were empty. The sky was blank, stripped of clouds, stripped of stars. The survivors stood together, trembling, realizing they were back at the beginning. The void being loomed in the distance, half-formed, waiting. And then they heard it. Footsteps. One survivor turned. Their eyes widened in horror. It was the one who had been taken, alive, smiling. But their shadow stretched too far, too wide. And it pulsed in rhythm with the void's endless heartbeat. The footsteps grew louder. Each step echoed too long, stretching across the empty streets. The taken survivor's smile did not fade. Their eyes glowed faintly, like embers buried deep in ash. The others stumbled back. The ground beneath their feet felt brittle, like thin glass ready to shatter. The air smelled of dust and wet stone. It clung to their throats, heavy, suffocating. "Do not be afraid," the survivor said. But the voice was wrong. It carried layers, as if thousands spoke through a single mouth. The fused one was gone. Only faint scorch marks remained where its body had broken apart. The others huddled together, whispering, trying not to breathe too loud. The survivor stepped closer. Their shadows slithered across the ground, bending, twisting, reaching for them like liquid hands. The survivors felt the rhythm again. That impossible heartbeat. It pulsed through the air, through their bones, sensing their own hearts against their will. One survivor cried out, clutching their chest as blood trickled from their nose. The taken one tilted their head, watching with calm amusement. "This is not a beginning," they whispered. "This is another end. You are only here because I dream you." The survivors froze. The world around them flickered, like an old film burning in its reel. Buildings bent, skies rippled. The ground breathed beneath their feet, and in that moment, they understood. They were trapped inside the mind of the one who had been taken. The streets twisted. Stone bent like wet clay, reshaping beneath invisible hands. Windows stretched into eyes. Doors melted into mouths. The city breathed, exhaling a rancid wind that stung the skin. The survivors clung to one another, hearts hammering against the rhythm forced into their chests. The taken one raised a hand. The sky shifted. Collars bled together, red seeping into grey, grey drowning in black. A low hum rolled across the horizon, vibrating like a swarm of unseen wings. The air smelled of rotten smoke, sharp enough to claw down their throats. One survivor screamed, but their voice warped, echoing back in a deeper tone that was not their own. The taken one smiled wider. "You see now," they whispered, their words dripping like honey over broken glass. "This place bends because I will it. This end is mine to sculpt." The ground split open, revealing a chasm filled with liquid shadows, thick and churning like tar. From it shapes crawled, limbs too long, faces blurred, mouths opening and closing without sound. The survivors stumbled back, their feet slipping on ground that pulsed like muscle. Every heartbeat shook the air, rattling their bones until their teeth ached.
One of them shouted, "Wake us! Let us out!"
The taken one's glowing eyes narrowed. "There is no out," they said softly. "There is only through." The shadows surged upward, reaching with dripping fingers, and the survivors realized they would have to move deeper into the dream to escape it. The shadows lunged. Cold hands wrapped around ankles and wrists. Their touch burned like ice pressed against raw flesh. The survivors kicked and thrashed, but the shadows did not bleed, did not tear. They only tightened, dragging them toward the chasm. The air filled with the stench of damp earth and rusted metal. Every breath was heavy, poisoned with smoke that scraped the lungs. The ground beneath them quivered, pulsing faster, as if the city itself shared the void's heartbeat. One survivor fell, clawing at the trembling stone. Their nails split, blood streaking across the ground. The shadows pulled harder, their limbs stretching, endless, like ropes made of liquid night. The taken one watched calmly. Their smile was patient, cruel, as if they had seen this moment 1,000 times. "You fight," they whispered. "But it is not resistance, it is ritual." The words twisted through the air, echoing too many times, too many voices layered as one. Another survivor screamed as their arm was swallowed to the elbow. The shadow hissed, releasing a burst of air that reeked of sulfur and rotting leaves. The taken one tilted their head, glowing eyes fixed on the group. "Deeper waits below. You will descend whether you choose to or not." The chasm widened. The heartbeat thundered. The city bent downward, every building tilting, funneling them toward the pit. And as the survivors slid closer to the edge, they realized the shadows were not dragging them down. They were guiding them. Streets cracked and folded, sliding toward the pit like broken teeth into a black throat. The survivors clawed at anything solid, walls, stones, each other. But everything bent, softened, and slipped away. Their skin prickled with cold sweat. The air thickened, heavy with the stink of burnt hair and wet soil. The shadows hissed, guiding them down with patient hands. Not tearing, not crushing, only leading. The taken one stood at the rim watching. Their voice carried easily, smooth and layered with the hum of the void. "Do not resist. Descent is passage. Descent is truth." The survivors slid over the edge. Darkness swallowed them whole. The fall was silent. No rush of air. No sense of distance. Only the constant throb of the heartbeat pounding louder the deeper they sank. Their bodies felt stretched, pulled thin like wax under flame. Eyes burned. Tongues swelled. Every heartbeat reshaped them. The stench grew sharper. Sulfur, copper, smoke, until it coated their throats like tar. Then, suddenly, the fall ended. They struck ground that felt soft, spongy, wet. The darkness thinned. Shapes emerged. Twisting spires rose from the ground, slick and pulsating, dripping with black liquid. The air shimmered, carrying faint whispers that scratched against their skulls. And ahead, glowing faintly in the haze, stood a doorway. Tall, narrow, carved into something alive. It pulsed in rhythm with the void's heartbeat. The survivors staggered toward it, unable to stop their feet. And behind them, from the walls of the chasm, faces began to form, silent, watching mouths opening in soundless screams. The faces pressed closer from the walls, skin melted into stone, eyes bulged glassy and wet, yet somehow alive, mouths gaped open, stretching wider than human jaws should, as if straining to speak. No sound came, only the scraping of bone against rock, echoing faintly in the chasm. The survivors froze, their chests tightened, lungs refusing air. Every instinct screamed to turn back. But the doorway pulsed, a steady rhythm, like a beacon, like a lure. The heartbeat grew louder with each step they took toward it. Behind them, the faces shifted, lips moved. Silent words, repeated again and again. The survivors watched closely and realized they were mouthing the same phrase, over and over. "Do not enter." The words branded themselves into their minds, but their bodies betrayed them. Feet dragged forward, heavy, unwilling yet obedient. The spire walls wet black echo that steamed where it touched the ground. The air grew warmer, sticky, like breathing through cloth soaked in blood. One survivor reached out. Their trembling hand brushed the surface of the living doorway. It quivered, flesh-like, alive. The whispers stopped. The faces froze. The heartbeat thundered so loud it rattled their bones. And then, the doorway opened. A searing light poured out, white and endless. It burned the air. It burned their eyes. It burned everything they thought was real. And from within, something began to step through. A silhouette formed in the blinding light, tall, distorted, its edges rippled, as though it wasn't bound by the same rules of matter. The survivors shielded their eyes, but curiosity forced them to look. The figure stepped closer. Its movements were deliberate, slow. Each footfall echoed like thunder in the cavern. The walls shuddered, dislodging flecks of stone that rained down like ash. The faces in the walls twisted violently. Their mouths stretched open in silent screams. Eyes rolled upward, as if blinded by the presence emerging. The air thickened with heat. Every breath scalded their throats. The light dimmed just enough to reveal more. A body covered in shifting patterns, symbols that read like living ink. They crawled across its skin, rearranging themselves with every heartbeat. No face. Only a void where a face should have been. An emptiness so dark it felt endless. One of the survivors staggered backward, whispering through trembling lips. This is what they worshipped. The figure turned toward them. Even without eyes it saw. Their hearts pounded out of rhythm, sensing instead with the monstrous heartbeat that filled the spire. One step closer. The ground cracked. Another step. The cavern groaned as though straining to contain it. The survivors realized the doorway wasn't leading into another world. It was leading this thing out, and the final barrier was already breaking. The stone beneath their feet split wider. A low rumble rose, like the earth itself was growling. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The survivors pressed against the walls, their shadows stretching and breaking in the unnatural light. The figure advanced, its body pulsed, symbols glowing brighter with every step. Heat radiated from it in waves, searing their skin. The smell of burning rock filled the cavern. One survivor clutched his chest. His heartbeat throbbed violently, matching the rhythm in the spire. He collapsed, gasping. The others tried to pull him up, but froze. The figure reached out. Its hand was long, skeletal, dripping with strands of black smoke. When it touched the fallen man, the cavern went silent. No sound, no breath. The man's body stiffened, then crumbled into dust. Ash scattered across the glowing floor, swept away by a current of invisible wind. The others recoiled, horror twisting their faces. The spire pulsed again. The heartbeat grew faster. The doorway widened. The figure leaned forward, pressing against the barrier. Cracks of white fire split across the air like glass about to shatter. The survivors realized, if the barrier broke, nothing outside would survive. The cracks spread like lightning across the air. Each fracture hummed, releasing sparks that scorched the cavern walls. The ground heaved beneath their feet. Stone split open, exposing rivers of molten light flowing beneath the surface. The heat grew unbearable. Their lungs felt scorched with every breath. One survivor screamed, clutching his head. The faces in the walls screamed back, mouths wild. Their voices overlapped in a chorus of agony. The figure pressed harder against the barrier. Its void face leaned forward. The symbols on its body flared, burning brighter than the sun. The cracks gave way. A sharp, deafening snap filled the chamber. The survivors fell to their knees, ears bleeding. The barrier was nearly gone. Only a sliver of light held it closed. Then something else stirred. From deep within the spire, a second sound emerged. Not a heartbeat this time, a voice. It was low, resonant, and it spoke words they could not understand. The figure stopped, its body trembled, symbols faltering. The voice grew louder. The spire itself shook, vibrating with every syllable. The survivors realized the truth. There was not just one entity behind the barrier. There were two, and the second did not want the first to leave. The voice rolled through the cavern like thunder underwater. Every stone vibrated. Every bone ached. The survivors pressed their palms to their ears, but the sound was inside them, deeper than flesh. The figure froze, its void face turning sharply toward the spire. The glowing symbols on its body flickered, struggling to hold form. The cracks in the barrier pulsed, widening, then shrinking as if caught in a battle of wills. The voice grew sharper. It did not sound human. It was layered, 1,000 tones woven into one. Low rumbles mixed with piercing shrieks. The cavern filled with the stench of ozone and burning iron. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. One survivor collapsed, clawing at his throat as though the words themselves were choking him. The figure snarled. The sound was jagged wrong, like tearing metal. It raised its smoke-drenched hand and pressed harder into the barrier. The air around it fractured, lines of light zigzagging outward like veins of fire. The voice roared back, louder than before. The spire flared with blinding brilliance. The cavern walls glowed, every face etched into stone now screaming in unison. The survivors wept trembling, because now they understood. The spire was not a prison. It was a battlefield, and they were trapped in the middle. The ground buckled beneath them. Cracks tore across the floor, spilling molten light into the cavern. The heat seared their skin, blistering in seconds. The survivors scrambled, stumbling over loose stone, their shadows stretching in unnatural shapes against the walls. The figure pushed harder, void face pressed against the thinning barrier. Its symbols blazed so bright they left after images in their eyes. The second voice thundered again, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. The spire flared in defiance, beams of white light slicing through the cavern. The two forces collided. Light against shadow, sound against silence. The air itself screamed, splitting with cracks of energy. One survivor fell to the ground, his body convulsing as the voices tore through him. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The others tried to drag him, but he turned to ash in their hands. The cavern shook harder. Stone columns toppled, shattering into shards. The barrier quivered, a single layer of light barely holding. The figure slammed its hand into it again. The sound was like glass breaking in their skulls. The survivors felt it. The barrier would not last, and when it shattered, neither side would care if they lived or died. They had only one choice: escape. But the only way out was back through the tunnel of screaming stone faces. They turned toward the tunnel. Its entrance flickered in the glow of the spire, the stone faces along its walls twisting in agony. Their mouths moved, whispering, moaning, shrieking. The air inside pulsed with the same rhythm as the spire's heartbeat. Every instinct told them not to enter, but behind them, the barrier cracked again. A shattering note split the cavern, sharp enough to rattle their teeth. The figure roared, a sound of grinding metal and burning air. The second voice thundered back, tearing through their skulls like claws. The survivors ran, feet pounded against shaking stone. They plunged into the tunnel, swallowed by darkness and echoing screams. The walls pulsed with heat, faces stretching out farther than before. Their mouths gaped wide, teeth jagged, eyes bulging. Some tried to bite. Stone jaws snapped inches from their flesh. Others whispered words too fast to understand, voices slithering into their ears. One survivor stumbled. Hands, cold and rough like carved granite, shot from the wall, clawing at his arms. He screamed, thrashing. The others pulled him free, but strips of his skin remained in the stone mouths. Blood spattered the floor. The tunnel seemed to lengthen, twisting into impossible angles. The farther they ran, the more the faces followed, eyes rolling, lips curling in mockery. Behind them, the cavern shook violently. A final, deafening crack split the air. The barrier was breaking, and the sound of something stepping through echoed into the tunnel. The sound followed them, heavy, measured. Each step cracked the stone beneath it, even from the cavern beyond. The tunnel vibrated with every impact. Dust drifted from the ceiling, stinging their eyes, clogging their throats. The survivors did not dare look back. Their lungs burned, breath ragged, but the tunnel seemed endless. The faces on the walls leaned closer now, their stone lips brushing skin, their whispers louder. "You cannot run. You belong here. You were chosen." The words slithered directly into their minds. One survivor screamed and pressed his palms against his ears, but the voices were inside, wrapping tight around his thoughts. He staggered, slowing. The others pulled at him, but he shoved them away. His eyes rolled back. His mouth stretched into a grin that was not his own. Stone hands erupted from the wall, dragging him in. His scream cut short. Only his blood remained, soaking into the cracks of the floor. The survivors pushed forward, terror pounding in their veins. The tunnel twisted suddenly, sloping downward. Heat surged from below, thick and suffocating. The stone faces grew fewer, replaced by carvings of spirals and eyes that seemed to move in the flickering glow. The air tasted of ash and iron. Behind them the footsteps grew louder, closer, and now something else breathed with them in the dark, slow, steady, too large to belong to anything human. The tunnel narrowed. The survivors pressed against the hot stone, scraping their skin raw as they squeezed through. The air thickened, heavy with the stink of sulphur and scorched dust. Every breath burned. The glow ahead flickered, faint and unstable, like fire struggling against a storm. They stumbled toward it, desperate for light. Behind them, the footsteps deepened, closer. The breathing filled the tunnel, rolling over them like a tide. The walls shook with each inhale. Stone spirals carved into the rock began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. The survivors froze, staring. The carvings were not symbols, they were eyes. Dozens of them, all opening. Their lids peeled back, revealing pupils that contracted in the flickering glow. The tunnel pulsed, alive, watching. The survivors staggered forward, panic rising like bile. One looked back. Only shadows filled the passage behind them. But something moved within that darkness, a shape too vast to see fully. Its edges rippled like smoke caught in a storm. Then, a hand, long skeletal, scraping against the stone walls, leaving black scars in its wake. The spiral spun faster. The eyes blinked in unison. The survivors ran, stumbling over jagged stone, their skin blistering from the heat. But the tunnel was no longer just stone. It was shifting, breathing, alive, and it was leading them somewhere deeper. The tunnel bent sharply downward. Their feet slipped on loose shards of stone, sending echoes tumbling into the depths. The heat thickened, pressing on their lungs, heavy as molten lead. Every breath scalded. The spirals on the walls pulsed with light now, beating in rhythm with the spire's heart above. The blinking eyes followed every step, unblinking, hungry. One survivor whispered, voice broken, "It is guiding us." The others said nothing, but they felt it too. The path twisted, shifting beneath their feet like the throat of some great beast. The stone no longer felt like stone. It was warm, slick. Their hands left smears when they steadied themselves. The glow ahead sharpened into a steady, searing red. It flickered like fire, but deeper, steadier, like the molten core of the earth. The tunnel widened suddenly, spilling them into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadows. The floor trembled with each pulse of the light. In the centre, a pit yawned open. From it poured heat so intense their skin felt as if it might peel away, and from within the pit came whispers. Not screams, not moans. Whispers, thousands of voices speaking at once, layered, endless. The survivors staggered back, covering their ears, but the sound poured directly into their skulls. The pit glowed brighter. Shapes began to rise within it. Not solid, not smoke, something in between. They twisted, reaching upward like hands clawing for freedom, and the survivors understood. The tunnel had not led them to escape. It had delivered them to the source. The shapes climbed higher, writhing, stretching, their outlines blurred, shifting from smoke to flesh to shadow in the span of a heartbeat. The whispers swelled. They overlapped, tangling into a language the survivors could almost understand. Almost. Every word scraped like claws against their minds. One survivor dropped to his knees, clutching his skull. Blood seeped between his fingers. His lips moved, repeating the whispers, syllables spilling out in a voice that was not his own. The others pulled at him, begging, but his eyes were already gone. Hollow, glowing with the red of the pit. The shapes leaned toward him. They reached with elongated fingers, their touch rippling across the surface of his skin. His body convulsed. Then it melted, flesh and bone collapsing inward, drawn into the shifting forms. His scream echoed long after his body was gone. The survivors stumbled back, horror etched across their faces. The whispers grew louder, faster, like 1,000 serpents hissing in unison. The pit trembled, sending a wave of hot air across the chamber. The stone floor cracked beneath their feet, glowing lines spidering outward from the abyss. The shapes clawed higher, straining against the unseen veil that bound them. And above it all, a deeper sound returned. The heartbeat, slower now, but stronger, as if something vast had awakened, and it was waiting for them. The survivors staggered along the chamber's edge. The heat pressed against their skin, blistering, peeling. Their eyes watered, vision swimming in waves of red light. The pit pulsed. The shapes clawed higher, their bodies twisting like smoke dragged through fire. The whispers became words now, clear, direct, joled. Belong. One survivor stumbled, knees buckling. His hands scraped the glowing cracks in the stone. The smell of seared flesh filled the chamber. He did not scream. Instead, he laughed, a hollow, broken sound. The shapes reached for him, their long fingers brushing his shoulders. His body sagged, and the pit pulled him down. The others backed away, choking on terror. The chamber vibrated as the heartbeat thundered again. Dust rained from the unseen ceiling. The spirals carved into the walls lit up, spinning faster, brighter. The voices from the pit clashed with the heartbeat. Each sound tore through the survivors' skulls, rattling their teeth, grinding against bone. The air itself felt sharp, cutting their lungs with every breath. Then, the pit heaved. From its center rose something larger, not smoke, not shadow, solid, colossal. Its surface shimmered like molten stone, covered in the same shifting symbols as the figure that had broken the barrier. But this one had a face carved from fire and stone, and its eyes burned with endless hunger. The colossal face rose higher. Its burning eyes swept the chamber, locking on the survivors. They froze, paralyzed beneath its gaze. Heat rolled off its body in violent waves, blistering their skin, cracking the stone at their feet. The whispers ceased. Silence fell. Only the steady heartbeat remained echoing deep within the earth. The being opened its mouth. Not wide, just enough. From within poured a sound so low, so deep it rattled their bones. Their teeth buzzed. Their vision blurred. The chamber walls shook, spirals spinning so fast they became blinding wheels of light. The survivors clutched their heads, collapsing to the floor. One crawled backward, nail-scraping stone, leaving bloody streaks. But there was nowhere to go. The pit expanded, widening with every pulse of the heartbeat. The colossal figure pulled itself higher, shoulders rising from the abyss, molten stone dripping from its form. Each drop hissed as it struck the ground, carving pits of fire into the floor. The air filled with the stench of burning metal and sulfur. The survivors tried to scream, but their voices were stolen by the vibration in the air. The being leaned forward. Its eyes burned brighter. And then, it spoke a single word. A word that was not sound but force. It struck through them, into them, cracking something deep inside. Awake. The chamber trembled. The heartbeat quickened. And above, far above, the earth itself began to shake. The chamber cracked wide. Chunks of stone fell from above, smashing into the glowing floor. The survivors stumbled, shielding their heads, choking on dust and heat. The colossal figure rose higher, its molten skin shedding sparks that seared the air. Every movement thundered, shaking the walls, splitting the ground. The spirals burned white, spinning faster than the eye could follow. The whispers returned. They poured from the pit in a storm of voices, each one clawing for dominance. The survivors clamped their hands over their ears, but the words burrowed deeper, past flesh, past bone, into thought. One survivor collapsed, convulsing, his body arched, mouth opening wider than humanly possible. A scream erupted, not hiss. It was layered, endless, a shard of the voices that lived in the pit. His chest split open, light spilling from his ribs like molten glass. The others staggered back, terror breaking them. The colossal being's gaze fixed on the dying man. It leaned closer, and with a single breath, it drew the light from him. The body collapsed, empty, nothing but skin and bone. The heartbeat thundered faster. The pit widened further, vomiting fire and ash into the chamber. The air tasted metallic, choking, sharp as rusted iron. The colossal figure was almost free, and the survivors realized the truth. It had not been imprisoned. It had been waiting for them, for this moment. The survivors stumbled toward the fractured tunnel, heat pressed against their backs, burning, urging them to move faster. Behind them, the colossal being clawed higher, molten hands tearing through stone as if it were paper. Its breath rolled like furnaces, filling the chamber with waves of scorching air. Every heartbeat from the pit struck their chests like hammers. One survivor dropped to his knees, coughing blood. The others tried to pull him, but the ground split between them. A river of fire erupted, cutting the chamber in half. Screams were drowned by the roar of molten stone. The colossal being's head emerged fully now, eyes like twin suns, blinding, merciless. Its voice was not sound. It was inside them, burning through thought, erasing memory, promising eternity. The survivors pressed against the crumbling walls, desperate for escape, but the spirals etched into the stone shifted. They were no longer symbols. They were doors, and one by one they began to open. Behind each, shadows moved, shapes with too many limbs, faces that bent and rippled, never still. The survivors realized with horror the colossal being was not alone. It was calling the rest through. The world above would not face one monster. It would face an army. The spiraling doors widened, stone grinding like bone against bone. From the first a claw emerged, long, skeletal, dripping black ichor that hissed as it touched the fire. From another, a face pressed forward. Its eyes were hollow sockets, yet they saw. The survivors backed against the cracked wall, their breath shallow, lungs tight with smoke and terror. The colossal being roared, but not in rage. It was summoning. Its call echoed through the earth, a vibration so deep their teeth ached. Dust fell in choking waves, coating their tongues with bitterness. One survivor grabbed a shard of metal from the rubble, his hands shaking, his knuckles white. Another clutched a pendant, whispering a prayer no one could hear. The shadows slipped through the widening cracks, limbs stretching unnaturally, bodies folding and unfolding like nightmares given form. The air turned colder. Despite the fire, every breath crystallized. Every step they took was heavy, as if unseen hands dragged them down. Then, silence. The roaring stopped. The grinding stone froze mid-motion. Even the fire bent low, bowing to something greater. From the largest door, a shape leaned forward. Not beast, not man, something vast, something ancient. And it whispered one word that none of them should have understood. Yet they all did, it said. Hum. The word lingered in the air. Home. It didn't sound like comfort, it sounded like a claim. The survivors staggered back, but their bodies betrayed them. Their feet slid forward, drawn by an invisible tide. The claw reached farther, scraping stone. Sparks hissing into the air. Its fingers stretched impossibly long, curling toward them like hooks. The pendant one carried grew hot, burning against his chest. He cried out, fumbling to rip it free, but the chain tightened, choking. The shard of metal in the other's hand vibrated, singing with a pitch that split the air. It was as though the steel itself recognized what stood beyond the door. The firelight dimmed, not from smoke, from shadow. Shadows that bent against the flame, swallowing it. The colossal being leaned closer, its vast form pressing against reality. The walls bled with cracks, each pulse of its whisper shaking loose more stone. And then, the survivor with the shard drove it into the ground. The sound split the silence like thunder. The doors shuddered. The being paused. The shadows recoiled. But the word came again, deeper, hungrier. Hum. And this time the earth answered back. The ground split beneath their feet. A deep rumble rolled through the chamber, low and guttural, like something buried for ages awakening. Dust poured from the ceiling. Pebbles rained down. The survivors staggered, barely keeping balance. From the crack in the floor, a faint glow seeped upward. Not fire, not light, something older, something alive. The shard in the ground vibrated harder, its edges humming in resonance with the glow. It wasn't just metal, it was a key. The massive claw froze mid-reach, as if sensing the change. The air between worlds thickened. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then, a sound like a chorus of whispers rose from the fissure. Thousands of voices, layered, calling. The pendant on the survivor's chest snapped its chain, flying toward the crack. It hovered above the glow, pulsing in rhythm with the whispers. The survivor tried to grab it back, but their hand passed through, as though the pendant no longer belonged to them. The claw twitched, The shadowy titan recoiled slightly, not fear recognition. The glow surged, the fissure widened, and what emerged was not light, but an eye, vast, unblinking, staring up from beneath the earth. The eye did not blink, its surface rippled like liquid obsidian, reflecting every movement in the chamber. The whispers grew louder. Some carried words, others were only sounds too ancient for the human tongue. The survivors froze, their chests tight, their breaths shallow. It felt as though the eye was not only looking, but searching, peering into their thoughts. A cold weight pressed against their minds. Memories they had buried surfaced without warning. Secrets they never dared speak. The claw above them trembled. It lowered slowly, almost reverently, toward the eye. The titanic shadow bent forward as though in submission. The shard on the ground split open with a violent crack. Inside it was no metal, no stone, but a swirling mass of light spinning like a storm contained. The pendant pulsed in time with it. The voices shifted. No longer whispers, but a chant. Unified. Commanding, the survivors' knees buckled. Every instinct screamed to run, but their body would not obey. The glow surged upward, brushing their skin with icy fire. And then, the eye began to rise, not from the crack, not from below, but from within the survivor's reflection, staring back at them like a second self. The reflection twisted. The survivor's own face warped in the black glass of the eye. Features stretched, hollowed until only a gaunt echo remained. Its lips moved, but the voice that followed was not theirs. It was deeper, layered, a chorus speaking from behind their bones. You were chosen. The chamber shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. The claw retracted, folding into the shadows like a retreating beast. The pendant burned against their chest, not hot, but freezing. As if liquid ice was flooding through their veins, the shard on the floor spun faster. Its light spiraled upward, coiling around the survivor's body like chains of living fire. Their vision blurred. Colours blurred, shapes dissolved. When focus returned, the chamber was gone. They stood in a void, endless, silent, but not empty. Figures emerged from the dark, tall. Still, cloaked in shadows that rippled like smoke, every pair of eyes open at once. Hundreds, thousands, all fixed on the lone survivor, and then, in perfect unison, they stepped forward. The figures closed in. Their movements made no sound, no footsteps, no breath, only the slow hiss of air bending around their shapes. The survivor's skin prickled. Each gaze felt like a needle pressing deeper, a weight behind the eyes, a pressure in the skull. Whispers bled into the silence, not spoken, but inside, threads of thought stitched into the survivor's mind. You saw what ended the world. You walked through the ashes. You carry what remains. The pendant pulsed once. The shard flared in response. The two glows intertwined, circling like twin serpents. The nearest figure stretched out a hand. Its fingers were impossibly long, each joint bending in ways that felt wrong. The hand stopped inches from the survivor's chest. A vibration hummed through the void. The survivor's heart stuttered in time with it. Then, the void cracked. A jagged line of blinding white tore across the darkness. The sound was unbearable, like glass shattering inside the ear, like bone breaking in the soul. Through the crack, a new world shimmered. Ruins, cities overturned, skies burning red, and somewhere within it, something enormous stirred. Its shadow spilled through the fracture, too large to comprehend, too vast to belong to any earth. The figures stepped aside, leaving the survivor alone before the opening. The whispers rose again, louder, insistent. Enter, or vanish with what was lost. The light bled into their skin. The choice was no longer theirs. They stumbled forward, toward the burning sky, toward the awakening shadow. The survivor crossed the fracture. The void dissolved behind them. The heat struck first, air thick with smoke and iron. Every breath scraped the throat raw. The ground crumbled beneath their boots, blackened stone. Ash clinging like wet sand. The smell of burned metal coated their tongue. Above, the sky red. Clouds churned like boiling tar. Lightning split in colours no eye should see. Red, green, something deeper than black. And within that storm the shadow moved. It shifted with weight. Each motion sent tremors across the ruins. A tower collapsed in the distance, swallowed by dust. The survivor could not see its full shape, only fragments, a curve like a spine, a claw like a mountain, an eye, unblinking, vast as a lake. It watched them, the pendant seared, the shards screamed. Their bodies convulsed with the force of it. The whispers followed, not from the figures, not from the void, but from the thing itself. You should not be here. The words rumbled through the bones of the world. Buildings groaned, streets split. The survivor fell to their knees, and still the voice grew louder. You walk in what was erased. You breathe in what was never meant to remain. You carry the fracture within you. The pendant cracked. Light spilled through the break. The air tore open again. Reality itself frayed like fabric pulled too thin. The shadow leaned closer. Its breath smelled of rust and storms. Then, its eye blinked. The world convulsed. The eyelid peeled back. Not like flesh, but like stone grinding against stone. The sound clawed through the air, rattling inside the survivor's skull. Light poured from the eye. Not warm, not bright, A cold illumination that revealed too much. The ruins shifted in its glow. Walls twisted into shapes that had never been built. Streets bent upward, curving into the sky like broken ribs. Every shadow writhed. Every shadow reached. The survivor's own skin shimmered under it, veins glowing faint blue, pulsing in rhythm with the eye. Their heartbeat was no longer their own. The ground split. From the crack, a sound rose, children laughing, voices layered, distorted, echoing from beneath the stone. The survivor staggered back, ash stuck to their palms. The heat turned wet, humid, like the air before a storm. The eye narrowed. The laughter stopped. Silence dropped heavy as iron. Then came the second voice, not booming, not distant, but a whisper, directly in the survivor's ear. You were not supposed to survive. The air collapsed inward. The survivor's body lifted, weightless. The shard and pendant tore free, hovering before the eye. The shadow leaned closer, its form breaking apart, reshaping as if reality strained to hold it. The survivor's vision blurred. Every colour smeared into silver. Every sound melted into static. Then a single phrase cut through. Do you remember the year 2000? The question burned, and with it memory stirred. The memories surged back. The year 2000. The countdown. The silence that followed. The world had ended then, not with fire, not with war, but with erasure. Time itself had split. One path consumed, the other, false constructed, given to those who could not accept oblivion. The survivor understood. They had never lived beyond that night. Everything after had been a shadow, a dream sustained by the fracture. The eye drew closer. Its gaze pierced through thought, through memory, through the last defences of the mind. You are the echo, it said, the last witnessed. The shard and pendant fused, dissolving into the survivor's chest. The light burned outward, brighter, brighter, until the ruins vanished. When the survivor opened their eyes, they were standing in the quiet of their own room. The clock read 12:01, January 1st, 2000. The world was still, too still. Not a sound outside, not a breath of wind, only silence. They reached for the window. Beyond the glass was no sky, no city, no stars, only the great unblinking eye, watching, waiting, and then the whisper came again, soft, final. The world ended. You just forgot to notice. Darkness closed in.